Hello, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed taking a look at that writing assignment. I saw some of you went right into your 470 groups, which is great. Nicely done getting ahead of everything there. Let me say I am happy with most of the effort put in. It looks like most of the groups tend to like each other. Everybody's been saying that everyone's doing their fair share. I will improve the usability of the review process a bit. A couple things I am seeing people missing is your scrum meetings, those weekly sessions. Everyone except the safety inspectors. What I've seen has been pretty weak. You guys aren't really doing a stand-up. You're kind of getting too bogged down in details. I know we didn't really take it too seriously in 270, but they will take it seriously in your workplace, most likely. So try to be a realistic contributor to the stand-up. It's supposed to be a quick meeting. Just get the points across, see where everybody's roadblocks are. It should be 5-10 minutes. You shouldn't be asking me questions. I'm just there to observe. So show me that you can do a good stand-up. It's not supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to be tricky. Some of you had like a Kanban Trello board in the beginning. Some of you are still maintaining it. Some of you kind of gave up on it. I like to see those Kanban boards, those Trello boards. Those are helpful. It's very popular in industry. It's good that you're using those. So keep that up, yeah, and keep on updating it. Go through it during your stand-up, move stuff around. A couple of the groups are getting bogged down in the whole. There are so many different ways to start. Which one do I choose? Just do it, guys. Just pick one and go, and then you'll see if it wasn't the right way. Yeah, when you're making something brand new from scratch that's never existed before, it's complicated, it's hard, and there will be a lot of false starts. We're already pretty far along. Hopefully you've gotten at least a couple false starts out of the way. But go deep, at least on one approach. Try to get something done. Okay, I think those are all my comments there. So meetings and Kanban boards and keep your contributions even and all that good stuff. All right. So today we're going to do a little talk about the career arc of a computer scientist, because there's a lot you probably haven't considered. These are just a couple of points that I want to share. And again, I want to preface this by saying what I said in the Getting a Job in CS presentation, that I think you've made a very good choice. This is a very good industry to be in, a very good career path, practically a guaranteed ticket to the middle or upper middle class. There's all kinds of good reasons to be a computer scientist, so none of this is to say that this is not a good profession. It's one of the best professions. It definitely has its dark sides, but it's still one of the best professions. Okay, so back in the day, people used to get trained on the job because there were very few formal programs to train you in computer science. Like you look at John Carroll's computer science program, for example. It wasn't started till around the 80s, and the first hires were primarily mathematical people because there weren't really any PhDs in computer science back then, and they taught you basically computer science concepts like Turing machines and stuff, and they themselves, those people who were teaching those classes, learned at mathematics departments where they practiced on punch cards and things like that. So it was definitely a different time. The skills were a lot harder back then. You didn't just fire up your IDE. You had to know all this different stuff, and you didn't really learn those skills in university in general. There were no boot camps. There was no informal training for the most part. In the 90s, you started to see boot camps and stuff come up, and you see a lot of computer scientists today come out of those with relatively little training. They just went through those and became SQL devs or web devs and stuff like that. A lot of them lose their jobs on downturns and pick them up later. But yeah, you really didn't see a lot of formal training programs, not even close to what you see today. So most people were trained after going through some kind of either university program or one of those boot camps. They actually got their real skills training in how to do their CS everything on the job. So today you know some of what you'll need to do your job, but at that point you learn pretty much everything on the job. And obviously this is a very significant expense to the employer. They're training you for probably a period of many months. That costs a lot of dollars up front. You produce basically no productive labor until much later, until you're formally trained. So let's look at the game theory of that situation. So in the US, employment is at will. You can leave whenever you want. They can fire you whenever you want, or whenever they want. So let's say that training at a company costs them, to train you, it costs them $3. Okay, or you can just hire somebody that's already trained by offering them an extra $2 in salary. So you offer $2 for trained people, right? Now, from the point of view of you, the person being trained, I'm getting $2. This is extra. This is on top of what they're paying me, what they would pay a person already. So you imagine they have whatever they're paying a person already. Dollar is on top of that, okay? So obviously I'm going to go, if I'm an already trained person, I'm going to go to the company that's offering me that extra dollar. So as soon as I'm trained at company XYZ and they spent $3 in order to train me, I'm going to go straight over to another company and earn an extra $2. And if company XYZ doesn't want me to do that, they're going to have to pay me that extra dollar, which means that their total expenditure in order to train and then retain me was $5. Whereas if I leave, they're just going to lose 3. And so what most companies have settled on is just not spending the money to train people and offering the extra dollars. And as time has gone on, the amount of extra they've had to offer people has gone up. And this is part of what drives CS salaries up, as it's so hard to find qualified people because nobody trains qualified people anymore. And it's also why it's so difficult to find jobs at entry level, because nobody wants to train anybody. All right, so as you enter industry and you are not trained, because generally speaking, the way every company handles their new people is just learn as you go. You'll figure it out. Good luck. Something along those lines. You might get a very brief onboarding period of like a couple of weeks when they show you a couple of things, and it'll be some engineer's job to show you around when he already has to do his day-to-day work on top of that. So it's probably not going to be great. So you're going to end up being clueless probably for quite some time. And you might end up thinking, I'm probably about to get fired. And generally you're not. Generally you will be performing at the same level that all entry-level people are performing at, which is to say not a very high level. It's okay. If you're doing badly, you're probably doing badly along with many others. And you might even end up not knowing what exactly you do, because they might have hired an entry-level developer for some project, not having a clear-cut sort of place for you to go, because they don't even really know what you can do. So you may end up in a situation where you're not exactly sure what you're supposed to do every day. And that's fine too, as long as they keep paying you, right? But that definitely gives, I've heard a lot of people express deep anxiety over coming into work every day, not sure what their job is and dreading that they're going to be terminated because somebody's going to figure out they don't actually do anything. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Now, you do have to keep up, because eventually the job that you have will disappear. Whatever programming languages you've probably learned Java and Python here, maybe JavaScript and HTML and some other stuff. What you know is good for 5 to 10 years max, less depending on the industry. If you learned, let's say, how to build websites in Dreamweaver, like I did back in 2003 or something, okay? That's great. You know where Dreamweaver is now? It doesn't exist anymore. It was completely discontinued, and I think the company's bankrupt, and the whole IP was bought out. That was Macromedia, okay? That doesn't exist anymore. What do people build websites with now? Like Angular and Vue and Node. Are those going to be here in 5, 10 years? No, they're all going to be gone too. Everything changes so fast in certain industries. And if you're a Dreamweaver dev now, there's no job for you. No. I mean, yes, you have some HTML and CSS skills that probably transfer over, but probably not. Now, you could try to get a job working in legacy tech, maintaining one of, let's say, the only Dreamweaver websites still out there. But that's risky, because there's a lot of unemployed Dreamweaver devs looking for legacy tech jobs. So you have a lot of competition, and eventually those jobs will vanish too. The legacy tech won't last forever. So unlike any other industry, really, CS more than anything else, you're expected to continue learning, and you're basically expected to do this on your own time, because you've got your job to do, right? And then you've got your preparation for your job to be once whatever language you're doing is discontinued. And again, no on-the-job training, really. So when your employer pivots to another language or everything, they're just going to expect you to catch up to productivity eventually. There will be maybe a grace period where your unproductivity is understandable, but if you're not catching up, they'll just replace you with someone who already knows that language. So you're expected to learn basically in your free time, and you have a lot of free time as a computer scientist in most companies. So all that time that you are spending browsing Reddit at your desk, try to learn another language or something instead so that you have some job security for when your stuff goes obsolete. I know a lot of people today who lost their jobs in the last downturn, 2008, or even this more recent one, and they were either SQL programmers or web devs, and they still have trouble finding employment. Legacy tech clings on, but it doesn't cling on forever. And at every company you work at, there will be at least one thing there that's super old and it's held together by glue and a bunch of error ignoring, and one day it'll just get discontinued for good. There's usually one person there who knows how it works, and when that person retires or they're not needed anymore, that's it. It'll be gone. And even all of the code that was compiled for x86 systems, so like Windows Vista and earlier, one day it just won't work probably, and maybe the same thing will happen to x64. Just don't invest your effort into something that's already legacy tech. If there's something like that at your company that's 10 plus years old and held together by glue, don't be the person who's responsible for fixing it. That's not a useful talent. That said, some tech, just because it's old, doesn't mean it's a legacy. Some tech is nearly eternal. You have, for example, the Zlog Z80. That's a microcontroller that was launched in 1976, and today TI, Texas Instruments graphics calculators powered by the Zlog Z80 are still sold for over $100 a unit. That chip has undergone no major changes. The TI-84 has undergone a few revisions, but it's still the same Zlog Z80 in there. They don't even use the entire 128 kilobytes of internal memory. Their operating system fits into less because they designed it in good old low memory tech. So just because tech is old doesn't mean it's legacy. And just because tech is new doesn't mean it's not. There's some year-old tech that's already obsolete. You see things, for example, like Python version 1 is way out by now. But you see a lot of people migrating from 2 to 3. That's a time-consuming and difficult process. You don't want to be learning, the Python 2 stuff. You should probably try to be going to 3 because pretty soon there will be a 4. So, if you seek money in your career, if you're trying to get as much money as possible, if that's your goal, my advice to you is switch jobs often. Raises come very slowly. Even in computer science, raises come slowly. You don't typically get raises based on the performance of your project. And even if you did, your project doesn't always succeed. Sometimes your project is a total flop and goes nowhere. So the highest earning people, they tend to move jobs every 1 or 2 years. So that means they're sending out job applications somewhere around 1.5 to 2 years into their job already. They do that even if they're maybe happy with the job. It's just if you want more money, you have to switch. If you switch jobs every 2 to 3 years, based on information from today, typically you will beat, if you had stayed there and just gotten annual raises, typically you will beat the annual raise by something like 20% on average. So if you move every 2 or 3 years, you'll get the equivalent of if you had gotten 20% more in raises. It could be much more drastic than that depending on where you're at in your career. And by the end of your career, you'll probably have doubled your salary, which means if you think mathematically in terms of how much that money propagated, first of all, every additional dollar you earn today is significantly more in your retirement. Second, you're earning that over time, so it's kind of like a power function. If you're earning 20, then 30, then 40, then 50, then 60, it doesn't matter that you've doubled by the end. It's the fact that you've increased more quickly. So you've increased your wealth maybe by 4 or 8-fold by just switching jobs often. So if that's what you're after, sorry, that's kind of what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to get good at doing job applications and such. If you seek promotion, slightly different avenues. So if you want prestige or management or whatever, if you're the kind of person that seeks that, well, first of all, make sure that you don't do more than your fair share unless you know you're going to get the credit. Nobody ever got promoted. Well, I don't want to say nobody, but very few people get promoted based on their performance review for middle management. People get promoted based on the attention that they get, the big things they do, and the credit they take for those things. The fact that you work an extra 20 minutes a day on your programming, whatever, is not going to get you a management role. Learn to take credit for everything that you do. Don't steal credit from people. That's crappy thing to do to them, but learn to take credit for everything that you do, take credit aggressively, and your technical skills are less important than your ability to socialize within your profession. So you need some technical skill probably, but definitely need to socialize with your management and the people who will ultimately give you promotions more. And one of the key things is to never stick around on a project for too long. You will inevitably make mistakes. Your project will inevitably fail. You need to jump projects before they fail. Never be attached to sinking ship projects. Jump projects or jump companies whenever it looks like your failures are going to catch up to you. Jump projects often, and you increase your odds of promotion. You can take credit for all the projects that were successful, and for all the projects that are unsuccessful, you can say that happened before or after I left. And that's a very good system for making sure that everything you did looks good. And the last thing I want to say is that CS has one really big problem, and that's ageism in this industry. So you guys are all mostly in your early to mid-20s, but the clock is ticking on you as well. One of the worst things about CS is how ageist it is. Once you are older, let's say 40s and 50s, it becomes extremely difficult to get hired. People just look at you at the interview and go, nah. And, neuroplasticity goes down. This is an industry, again, where you have to constantly learn. So there's something to be said for it in practical terms, but it is very unfortunate because it's a form of discrimination that we will all face because every one of us is going to get old at some point. So don't do it to people today, and hopefully they won't do it to you later. But if it doesn't change, remember that you need to get where you want to be, hopefully by your late 30s, late 40s at most. Remember, your advancement has to happen early. There's probably not going to be that much time for it later. If you want to be a manager, you should probably strive to make it there by the midpoint in your life. If you're waiting until your 60s, you're probably not going to get there. And make sure that you're learning skills that are going to be useful later on. Again, keep up with those skills and everything. And this is unfortunate. I definitely know computer scientists who are in their 50s who are very successful, but they are primarily managers and architects, or they've gotten into senior management roles. They don't write code anymore. And I also know people who are in their 50s who are really struggling, who are barely clinging on to a job they have, or chronically unemployed, because people will barely even interview you once you've gotten to this age. Although to an extent, in many of those circumstances, it is also their fault because their only skill is in a language that is no longer in demand. So again, that's a twin problem. You're old, your skills are in a language that's no longer in demand. Now you have two things really counting against you. So don't let that be you. And that's it. All right, guys, go on and do your Scrum sessions, work on your projects. Good luck. I will talk to you in Discord.